me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we begin, Councillor Melton wanted me to remind everyone he's out today on vacation, but sends his regards in absence. And I'm not sure where Councillor Burke is. We've got first up the approval of the memorandum of the May 17th, 2021 regular meeting. Copy has been posted. Any questions or motions?
Move to approve.
Got a first from Councillor Choi.
Second.
Second from Councillor Culp. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The memoranda of the May 17th, 2021 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we've got request to speak on agenda items. I've got 4 request to speak cards here, so I'll go in order that we received. First up, we've got Angela Williams. If you want to come to the lectern, as a reminder, you have up to 3 minutes if you can give your name and address. And after that, I'll start the clock and I'll give you a 1-minute warning. So if I'm raising my finger, I'm not asking a question, just trying to give you a heads up.
Angela Williams, 975 West Oak Street.
Feel free.
We meet the requirements as an aggrieved person in Indiana Code 367313, and the ordinance should be updated to reflect this. Also, I have some updated supporting information in a packet that I would like to give to you if permitted. The portion of the alley the PARs are trying to take for their personal benefit is an active public right-of-way. If you vote to approve this petition, you will create a lack of alley clearance needed for my family to safely egress from our garage to the street. 2 council members met with us in person at our property and could clearly see the lack of clearance and the safety issues that would result if this petition is approved. For those of you that were not able to meet with us at our property, we would like to ask that Councilman Choi or Councilman Plunkett share their observations of the clearance and safety issues that would result if this petition is approved. We met with the Director of Planning and Development at our property this past Wednesday. From that discussion, we now believe that nobody from his group or a technical advisory panel actively evaluated or commented on the clearance or safety aspect of vacating this alley. While a variety of people were asked to comment on the petition in regards to their respective expertise, silence or no response from those individuals equates to no issue or no problem in the staff memo. This leaves you, the town council, fully responsible and accountable for understanding and evaluating the clearance and safety issues that will be created for our property and our neighbors to the east if you vote to vacate this public alley. A portion of the area to be vacated in the PAR's petition appears to include land on the southwest corner of the originally platted alley that was purchased or taken by the railroad over 100 years ago. That southwestern portion ceased to exist as an alley when it became railroad property. All of that railroad land was given to Zionsville Parks and Recreation in 1991. The PAR's survey is incomplete and useless because it does not show the park's boundary to clearly identify where the parkland ends and the alley begins. The PAR's goal for the petition is to take the alley so they can build a private residence across the alley onto 990 West Pine Street. 990 West Pine Street is not buildable per the deed restrictions in 1991 quitclaim deed from the railroad to Zionsville Parks. Lee Burton, the president of Railroad Inc., was passionate about and spent a lifetime advocating for public parkland. Mr. Burton's donated railroad land included 990 West Pine to forever remain for the purpose of Parks and Recreation to honor the memory of his late wife, Nancy Burton. It is unconscionable as well as illegal for the town of Zionsville to allow a private citizen to build a private residence on this donated deed restricted land. In addition, please ask yourselves if the petitioner's goal of taking an active public alley to build a 2-story, 190-foot long house across it fits with the current form and character of our block. And is it appropriate for you to vote to take away a portion of an active public alley to give it to a private citizen for their personal gain, specifically alleyway that we require to safely egress from our lot?
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
If you want to hand Ms. Lacey your documentation, she can present it here to council. Next up, we've got Chris Parr. If you'd like to speak, you're going to speak first. You still have 3 minutes, Mike, right? Right, Mike? 3 minutes. Yep. Okay.
For the record, Mike Andreoli, 1393 West Oak Street. As the public hearing in this matter had previously been closed, I'm not going to talk about the information and material that we had submitted previously. And I suspect that the only reason that Chris and Jackie indicated they wanted to talk was in the event there were any questions of members of the town council, so they had filled out a sheet and they could respond. All I wanted to comment on was our attempt to try to resolve this particular situation by our letter that I'd sent to the town council members regarding our commitments to burden our property that the PARs have that will not be under roof or anything of that nature with a vehicular access easement so that the Williamses can back out of their garage safely and then turn. So they won't even have to turn. They can come straight back. The area is 8 feet deep by 15 feet wide that we will burden our property with an easement for the benefit strictly of the Williamses. They won't have anything to do in terms of having any responsibility for that. They won't have to insure it. We will insure it. It'll be on our property. We'll maintain it and we'll gravel it with stone to be able to go ahead and provide that. If the town would be gracious enough to give us that vacation where we're picking up ground, it seems fair and reasonable that we should be part of the solution to help the neighbor not have to have any problems backing out of their garage. So it seemed like a reasonable approach, a very reasonable effort to try to be goodwill. The other thing is this would help the neighbor immediately to the east of us at Pine Street. They have a porch right there, and where we would build our addition, which would be a single story onto the home on Oak Street, we would be north of that particular porch so that they would not have to look out next to a new home right there close to their property line, which is very close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andreoli. Mr. and Mrs. Parr, do you want to speak anything now, or we may ask questions as a part of the process? So, okay, very good. Amy, is there anyone online that's asked to speak?
No, there is
Okay.
not.
Very good. Next is the mayor administration update. Is there any update from the administration?
There is no update from
Okay,
administration.
great. Then we will go on to old business. We have one old business item, the one we were just discussing here in public speaking. This is a consideration of an ordinance vacating a portion of public right-of-way. This is the PAR request, ordinance 2021-07. This is a first reading. It was continued from our last meeting on May 17th, 2021. Mr. Kilmer, Roger, are you here? I've got you listed as the presenter here. If there's anything to add? Oh, there's Roger. Roger, anything you'd like to talk about here?
I just wanted to bring to the attention of the council, there are 3 updates to the staff report, which was originally presented to you at the prior meeting. The 3 updated bits of information would be clarification on Exhibit 2, which is a location map. Initially, it did not include a parcel that is owned by the petitioner, which is on the south side of the alley and is to the east of what was originally designated as their property. So the Exhibit 2 in the packet is correct. Item number 2, in the May 17th discussion, there were some questions about whether a trail access or alley did exist on the west side of the petitioner's property. And research has shown that at one time there was an alley there, but in 2 different actions, one in 2010 and one in 2013, the Zionsville Town Council vacated those alleys. So they are now part of the petitioner's property. The third update to the memorandum or the staff report is that at the May 17th meeting, the petitioner did provide an information packet to you for review. And since then, the remonstrators provided a response to that packet. It is attached as Exhibit 8 to this staff report. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Roger. So counselors, if you have questions, we can ask Roger from a town perspective. We've got Mr. Andreoli here representing the PARs, but also the PARs here if you've got questions of them. Ms. Williams is here if you have questions of her. So I'll open that up to anyone here who's got questions.
So one of the questions I have is the
the piece of the parcel that Mr. Andreoli mentioned that would be gravelled out so that the Williams could back out into that way. Originally, when we had talked about this, we had talked, there were questions about who actually would retain the liability for that piece of land. So Roger, do you know about that, or Mr. Andreoli, who would maintain that liability?
I will allow Mr. Andreoli to address that.
Thank you. Originally, there was some discussion about whether or not my clients wanted to assume the liability of that. Since they're really not going to be using it, they're going to be exiting their garages with a new construction on to the west and would exit and enter off of Oak Street. That would be fine. If the Williamses were agreeable to this solution, we could do something by agreement. They were not interested in working with us with regard to that particular proposal. So my clients, I think, unilaterally decided that they would assume responsibility for that. It will be on their ground. It will burden their property. It will benefit specifically the Williams property. That's how the easement will be drafted. The graveling and stone that will be put in there will be done by my clients at no expense to the Williamses. In addition to that, my clients will assume all responsibility for that land. That will be their land. They will insure it, and the Williamses will have no liability other than the permanent and perpetual ability to use it when they back out of their driveway. We did provide in my commitment that we didn't want to have parking there. That's for their benefit, because it doesn't do any good to put parking there. People are going to back out of their driveway and there's cars there. We won't use it in any event because sedition goes in. All of our cars will go up to Oak Street, and we will not be using that alley for any type of vehicular traffic under any circumstance. So hopefully I've answered your question, Counselor.
So as far as shoveling, maintaining, like when it snows, shoveling, all that is.
All of that will be done by my clients. The PARs will assume all maintenance responsibilities. If additional gravel needed to be put in, they would do it. If it needs to be cleared, they would do it in conjunction with the rest of their ground. That would be their obligation. That would be their responsibility. Technically, if they don't want anybody pushing snow into it. Obviously, if somebody's going to try to clear the alley, and then they have to be responsible for it. But I think, given the fact that we're going to gravel it, we decided we could allow them to go on the grass. But if it gets muddy or something like that, that could prevent them from appropriately backing in and out of there if they get stuck or something like that. So we decided we'd go ahead and do all of the gravel and stone with us. And in our commitment, we provided a timeline for that we'll do it in conjunction with the building of our addition, if you grant permission for the alley vacation. And then if not, they start their process before we do. We'll get it in before their house is built. So they will never have a situation under any circumstance where they will have to back out of a garage into an area that will not have stone and gravel in it, and they will be able to use it appropriately and legally.
Does this commitment go with the property, meaning that?
Yes, that's a very good question.
Event of a sale of the home.
Very good question for the Williamses. That this will perpetually and permanently burden the Pine Street lot where this will be on, and it will perpetually benefit the Williamses lot, which will be adjacent across the alley to the north. So they will be the benefited party. The burden party will be the lot on Pine Street, and that will be the PARs. And we will do an easement, and we will have that recorded, and that should be part of your approval process. To the extent that you would vote to approve this, it should be conditioned on a recordation of that, so it runs with the land permanently.
I have some more questions. Do you have any more, Alex? So, Mr. Andreoli, did you know about the Pine Street lot that the PARs own is non-buildable? Do you know anything about this? That they're
we know nothing about that. It's not buildable. We've got title insurance on it, and they've done surveys, and we've got complete surveys of the lot. That builders look at it, and it's from our standpoint, it's completely buildable.
I guess. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Do you know anything about that, Wayne? I mean, Do you know anything about that land not being able to be buildable?
Deed restriction.
That's what the Williams mentioned.
Hmm.
That's what they mentioned.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wayne, I was looking at you and I didn't say your name.
Yes, good evening and thank you. No, the staff, we have no position specific to the buildability or providing any sort of assurances related to any sort of deed restrictions. That's, I mean, this is the same issue you mentioned to the Williams. She has information on one side, Mr. Andreoli has information that's opposing. That's, the staff is not mediating the determination on that.
Okay, so Switzerland.
How does that get
Switzerland.
figured out then?
Yeah, who figures
How
that
does
out?
that get figured out?
Sort out the deed
From a
restriction.
permit point of view, it would come in and there would be a warranty, the warranty deed and the information specific to the owner's authorization. Now, that's, the staff is accepting that information and dropping it into the file. If we're not researching and verifying information that could, any sort of deed restrictions, we will read that. But Mr. Andreoli clearly is relying on a deed restriction that's for their lack of a deed restriction.
I can answer that. They had, Gary Anstett was a realtor who was very knowledgeable about property here. They checked into that, into the buildability of that lot. That was going to be a plan B, of course, if this is not permitted. And they've even talked with the neighbor about it. They had plans drafted that would show that they'd be able to fit it on that particular lot. There might have been some issues with some of the concerns initially if those areas to the west were not vacated, but we provided all the vacation information actually done through the town and the park board several years ago when Roger Burris facilitated it. And Ed Mitro, I think, signed affidavits to it vacating that property. So that we own that property and that gives us additional ground over there. So we're not familiar with any deed restrictions whatsoever. And if there were any, they've never been communicated to you two with regard to that, and that never appeared in any type of title chain because they did receive title insurance when they bought that property. So.
Another question for you, Mr. Andreoli. So if and the PARs can answer this too, if you don't mind. If you do not get this vacated tonight, what is Plan B?
I will tell if you don't mind.
No, it'd be great.
Plan B is that they will build a house on the Pine Street lot.
Pine Street.
That is Plan B. It will be a good size home. They have 4 kids and there's not enough room in the current home to house those. That's hence the addition they want to put on. So they'll build their forever home there on that particular lot. I don't think they're going to need any variances when we looked at it, but to the extent we need any in terms of side yards or anything like that, we could request those. The real problem with that though is, and they discussed that with their neighbors immediately to the east. I think you saw where the
I know the deck.
property line's right there. And so the house that they would put up would be permissible, but would be so close to the neighbor's porch on that side, it would not be a good ideal situation for their neighbor immediately to the east. So this proposal that we've come up with, at least we hope, solves a number of different problems, including helping the neighbor out so that members of the council have not seen the area out there. Where they would put their addition is fairly far north. It would start on the Pine Street lot. So it would be north of where the neighbor's porch is. So would have all that open space in the front of the lot because they would not have a building on that. The building would be 1-story addition, not 2-story. So that also helps with some of the spatial issues with regard to people looking over the house and this, that, and the other. Thank you.
I just have one last question, then I'll not for you, Mr. Andreoli. Thank you, by the way.
I actually have a couple questions for Mike.
Yeah, stay up there.
Mike,
Yeah,
can you go?
Stay up there, Mike.
Getting your steps in today, Mike.
Yeah. Sorry.
I just have a couple of questions. Obviously, we got the information or the email that you sent to us regarding that particular piece of property and allowing the back out there with the gravel. Was that conveyed to the Williams?
Yes.
And what was their response?
What I had done initially is I wrote the Williamses and said, we have a proposal. And the proposal involves parceling off some of our ground and burdening that ground with a gravel area where you can back straight out of your garage and then angle so that there wouldn't be any issues with regard to turning radiuses. The intention that they have, I think they've communicated, is they're going to move that pole that is there and try to move it to the other side of the lot. So we created a 15-foot wide with 8-foot deep, which gives them 15 feet plus 8 feet to be able to back straight up and then out in the area of their garage. We communicated that to them that we were interested in doing that and working with them. They emailed back right away and indicated they were not interested in working with us on that.
Okay. The second question, and this might be more for the PARs, I don't know, but would there be an appetite for, if this were to get done, would there be an appetite for a sidewalk potentially just between the two houses to
No.
keep access to the railhead?
No,
or
there would not be
trailhead?
an appetite for that because that would literally be right next to the neighbors. You're talking about on which side? You're talking about?
Yeah, just instead of people, my understanding, there's some folks that walk through that property to get to the trailhead instead of going out to whatever 8th or whatever it is, and then down to Pine to come in just to have access in the alley.
No, we couldn't burden our ground with that, mainly because we're concerned primarily about being right next to the neighbor. The neighbors, our lot is really almost at the neighbor's front porch.
Sure.
And I don't think we would commit to that.
Sure.
If you're
Liability
gonna-
issues too, right?
If you're going to speak, no, it's totally fine. Just ask you go to the lectern just so
Okay.
we can hear.
Certainly, we've not talked with them about that, and I could speak for Jackie about that. They've not communicated that with them, never thought that necessarily would be something that they would want under any circumstance to have people going down through that walk.
Fair.
Hey, Mike, real quick. I do go out there and just kind of take a look around. I appreciate the effort of what you're trying to propose in terms of allowing them some space to back out. I think it's necessary. Otherwise, I don't see how I could have voted for it. Just help me with, how is this legally binding in perpetuity that this space wouldn't be taken and used or dug up or something? How is that legally protected?
It could not be, since this, they will have a permanent and perpetual, it'll be non-exclusive easement for vehicular traffic to back in and out, because they may have delivery people or others that would use their, have to deliver to their house, or any number of perhaps municipal vehicles that would come in there and would want to be able to use it to be able to get down the alley. So, but it would be it would be perpetual in that way, that nobody else could use it. We cannot remove it unilaterally. This would be part of the approval process. We would have to commit to that, and it would run with the land, just similar to any other easement. It would burden our ground, benefit theirs, and it would run with the land permanently. No changes to it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Unless there was a change that they wanted to make and they were agreeable to change, but there would be no ability to make a unilateral change in that at all.
Appreciate it.
I have a question for the Williamses, Mr. or Mrs. Williams. Can you just let me know, or let us know, the proposal that was given to gravel that area, why did that not sit well with you?
Yeah, what we have right now currently is a public alley, an active public alley that has more than enough space for our family and other neighbors and other visitors to back out of our lot and make a clean 3-point turn. It does not make sense. I had kind of expressed that if you were in a parking spot at a parking, say you're at Lowe's, you're in a parking spot, you would not want to back into another spot behind you to then turn and pull forward. That's awkward. To make a clean back into an alley that is maintained and protected by the town is much more desirable than trying to kind of back into another spot to make a turnaround. Based on the amount of information that we feel and have shared that has been inaccurate from Mr. Andreoli, and then the lack of concern for our safety in the vacation of the alley that we have been expressing since September, before the PARs closed on their home. At this late time, we don't trust an option given to us by the PARs or Mr. Andreoli. We trust that our rights would be protected in the public alley as it exists right now. So,
I have a question for you. When are you building your home?
well, we had our plans put together. It was March 1st of 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And right now we're kind of waiting for those lumber prices to come back down.
I
So
don't
that's
blame
where
you.
we're at.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, we've got, and I shared this with you when we're out there, we've got two different sides, right? We want this alley vacation on one side, and we don't want it on the other. And it seems like everyone's dug in so hard, right? We've heard the PAR's plan B for their lots is to build a house on the lot south of where they are now. What alternative or what, how can we make this work for you guys?
Yeah.
And I say that because I too was out there with you guys and with the PARs. And honestly, the easiest thing for me to do when I was parked in where your gravel was to go straight back and then go out that alleyway, as opposed to trying to do that 3-point turn. And if that alley is vacated, then there are no kids or there's nobody west of there. So there's not a safety concern by way of anything in that regard, just backing straight up. I believe the PAR's even planning to put a fence up there, so there would never be anybody back there. I feel like we're arguing safety and we're seeing two different sides of how safe this could be.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I provided in an email to you all is currently right now, they wouldn't have enough space to add a driveway to the west side to then have their ingress egress from Oak Street. I don't have right in front of me, but Zionsville states that you need to have 15 aggregate and driveways have to be 5 feet off of the property line. So although Linda Bush did vacate that alley that runs north-south on the west of 985 West Oak Street, my concern is that you may approve this alley vacation and then they don't. They then have the alley and they're still using the alley as an alley. Also, I provide a lot of information that shows that primary ingress egress from a primary arterial is discouraged. There are a lot of good reasons for that, safety reasons for that. From my perspective, it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's possible without going through variances and other processes for them to even have their drive on the west side to Oak Street.
So,
yeah.
So maybe I should restate that question. If this gets approved, what's the best case scenario for you? What would you like to get out of this if it were approved?
This is definitely a hill that I think we're willing to die on. We purchased our property with a public alley that provides the clearance that we need. We purchased our property with parkland at 990 West Oak Street. And in the packet I gave to you, it shows you exactly all of the deed restrictions and how 990 West Pine Street became parkland. The Ottingers who owned it sold it to the railroad and then it subsequently became, there's a lot more information. It would take a long time to go through all of the deeds and documents. I can clearly see how the land is not buildable. To answer your question, yeah, we're strongly opposed to the vacation and it's in your hands to make the decision whether or not to vacate the petition as it was written.
So to be clear, you would be willing to walk away from an opportunity to back out directly behind your garage?
Yes, we should not sacrifice our safety to have a backing out area that would be provided and not protected by the town or maintained by the town. We are not interested in having a piece of gravel on the PAR's property that isn't maintained or protected by the town.
What's the safety issue?
The safe.
You keep saying your safety is in danger. I don't understand.
Okay, so originally when I spoke to you guys, it was if it gets vacated, we don't have enough space back out of our garage
Right.
back the tail end to the west into what now exists as the alley, to then pull forwards out of the alley. We would have to back out 265 feet. The only way that we would not back out would be if we went onto someone else's property, which we shouldn't have to go onto someone else's private property to make that 3-point turn.
But that's what we're proposing. Like that's the thing that I'm probably having a hard time wrapping my brain around. Like, this is a piece of property that the town owns, and essentially in an effort to do a land swap, for lack of better terms, we've got an opportunity to get you something safe in what you want.
We don't feel that it is safe. We feel
Why?
that doing a 3-point turn with the existing alley, that is the safest, and we don't want to sacrifice on what we believe is the safest.
I do have a question for you. So your current, I saw your plans, your current garage is flush basically with the alleyway.
It sits, we have a 5-yard or a 5-foot setback,
Okay.
side yard setback. So it's 5 feet off of our property line, and then 5 feet off of the alley property line at the rear. Does that make sense?
So you have 10 feet?
No, 5 from the west and 5 from the south.
Right, but what about from the, well, 5 feet from the south, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't, someone may have another question for the Williams.
I don't have a question so much as kind of a statement of where I stand on this, because this, alley vacations, you don't have to stand up here, Ms. Williams.
Thank you for your time.
Alley vacations in the past have always been just kind of a slam dunk. I mean, everybody agrees on it. This is the first time we've had to look at something like this. I've got 2 concerns around, I think that the gravel piece on the PARS lot is a reasonable solution, but I do have concerns around that, in that unless I get a judge or a definitive impartial opinion from somebody that it has to be maintained. What if, the Williamses are trying to back out and it hasn't been shoveled and they can't get out into that area? And are they going to call the PARS up, and the PARS said, we don't have time to get around to it? It's different than calling the town and saying, we can't get out, because that's one concern. The second concern is that this is not like, the alley vacation is not like other things that we've had to deal with, where somebody says, I want the property behind my house to remain a wooded lot forever. This is kind of a commitment from the town to the neighbor, saying there's an alley, there's a street, there's these kind of structures that the town has more or less guaranteed it would exist, unless that there is a considerable reason why it should be changed. And whereas it would benefit one person, it would hamper another person. And I would suggest that that my suggestion would be to try to figure out how to work this out. But my personal opinion is that if this can't be worked out, that the town is under no obligation to vacate that piece of property, because it is an alleyway. And in my opinion, unless everybody agrees that it should be vacated, that it should not. So I feel fairly strongly that hopefully that the 2 parties here could come to a reasonable agreement on this. But that's my feeling. There's nothing written in stone about the precedent around this, but it's just a very disturbing way to address, and it's going to be bothersome, because you guys are going to be neighbors and you're having difficulty going over this. Mike, what you're expressing frustration, so okay.
If you're going to speak.
Enjoy exactly what you said, and all appropriate comments. The problem is, we've tried. We've tried to work something out. We've tried to come up with an alternative that provided no liability for the Williamses, that provided permanent ability to back out, that provided no expense to them. I'm not exactly sure what all more we can do.
I'm not sure either, but
I understand.
there's always, I feel like there's always opportunities. There may be none at this point, but the other question I have is to our council. Do you know of the restriction on the easement around this, what the actual legal responsibilities would be on the PARs?
No, so I was sharing that this is something that the administration legal counsel's been working on. So I don't know all of the details. I wouldn't want to speak to those specifically, but I do think it's, something that we should take a look at, as well as whether or not the original deed of the land, which is something that was brought up, was restricted in any way, because that could have a consequence for the town. And I know that Wayne mentioned, we don't want to mediate that, but I guess we'd want something with an assurance.
Well, and I think that's a good comment. And if that's something that the council wants to explore further, if we don't have a plan B, that may affect the council's decision with regard to the vacation. It may not. But the other opportunity it would do is give me an opportunity to prepare the actual easement itself, so council and staff can take a look at it as to its A, veracity, and B, its legality. Because I'm not aware of any problems with regard to burdening your property for the benefit of another that presents any causes any legal impediments other than the burden property. It causes responsibilities on our property. And I'd be happy to go ahead and put that together if you want to see it.
I think we've got a lot of information here to think through. Also, just to remind this council that this requires 2 votes. So any vote today is not going to bind anyone to anything. I appreciate the PAR's willingness to come up with a creative solution. I'm always appreciative of people that are willing to find some sort of common ground, especially as Councilor Choi said, you will be neighbors. And I want you to live happily next to each other and not contentiously for the next few decades. I would also say that if this were to not pass, but if we were to introduce this in the first reading and go to a second meeting, I think that is an opportunity for both parties to get together and find the best possible solution. And Williams, if there is no solution that works, if you're going to die on this hill, then I can't guarantee how that will be voted, but I think this is your chance to, get something you may want. Do you want that lot paved instead of rock? Do you want it in a different angle? I mean, whatever it may be, I think the more that you're able to come to this next council meeting with something that you can at least not all agree on, but at least can live with, I think we'll go a long way towards getting this resolved. And if not, then, well, we'll vote and someone will be really happy and someone will be really unhappy and you'll have to live next to each other. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to introduce this on first reading. Again, this will go to a second vote, but just to move this along to a second meeting and give Mike and his clients and Williams time to do what they need to do. And if there's anything Wayne wants to add in during that 2-week period on deed restrictions and whatnot, that's fine as well. So
Second.
we got a second from Vice President Plunkett.
Point of information. Does this mean that at the next council meeting, we do have to take a vote?
We do not. We can continue it as long as we need to. This is just to get it to that second step.
Okay.
I'm gonna risk an all in favor in this and see how this goes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
All right, then let's do a roll call just to make sure we got that accurately. So we've got a motion to introduce on first reading. Again, this is not a vote for finality. This is a vote to send to a second step. I had a second from Councilor Plunkett. If you're voting yes, you are voting to introduce this, where we will have a final vote at a future meeting. If you're voting no, then you don't want this introduced. And if there are enough no's, then we'll have to go back to it. So, Amy?
Okay. President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
Yes.
Councilor Choi,
No.
Councilor Culp,
Yes.
Councilor Melton. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Melton is not here. Councilor Trailer.
No.
Okay. That's what I thought I heard, but better to be official. So ordinance 2021-07 is introduced on first reading with a vote of 4 in favor, 2 opposed. That's it for old business. You guys are welcome to stick around, or you're welcome to sneak out. If you got 4 kids, you probably want to sneak out. Maybe go to a bar or something and say you were here. New business. Mark Dowd If you want to come up, Regional Director for Senator Mike Braun to give a little information about what's going on with Senator Braun's office and how it affects Zionsville.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mark Dowd. I'm the Regional Director for Senator Mike Braun. I don't want to take much of your time, but I've been on the job for about 8 weeks now. And when I get an opportunity to come to a council meeting, sometimes it's easier just to introduce myself kind of all at once. I can leave some business cards with Amy here for you to pick up afterwards if you like. But the senator, as you probably suspect, does do outreach to constituents. So from time to time, I'll probably try to schedule meetings either here in Zionsville. I did a couple weeks ago a meeting, open office hours up in Lebanon. But we do try to have outreach with constituents and just hear their concerns similar to what you all do at the council level. So I just wanted to introduce myself this way. Sometimes it's easier this way than to try to set up individual meetings. And Councilor Choi was courageous to try to set up some meetings between just the two of us, and we kept our schedules kept preventing us from doing that. So I thought this might be a better opportunity to do that. So I just wanted to introduce myself and make myself available to you. Anytime that you might have a federal government issue that comes up, we'd be glad to help in any way we can. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any questions for Mr. Dowd?
Is this a new role for you?
With Senator Braun, I've got some experience in years past with Senator Lugar and also with congressmen who represented the 4th district.
Okay.
So, but it's been a few years since I've been in this role.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Next, we've got the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library presentation regarding the expansion of services and bond issuance. Counselors, there is no vote on this. This is just information only. And I see Sarah, you're already up there.
I'm just going to get my laptop ready for you.
I see an owl.
Oh, all right. It's better than seeing all the
It's
icons.
staring into my soul right now.
Josh, who?
Yeah.
Come on.
Wow.
Work with me here.
Wow.
Dad joke 101. Well done.
I didn't hear it. Do I want to?
No, you don't hear it. You don't hear it. There we go.
All right. Okay. Hi. Well, my name is Sarah Moore, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library. And I brought a few people here with me tonight to be able to answer questions or provide information when needed. So I'm just going to quickly introduce, I have Monty Cordy, who is our Library Board President. I have Nick Weber, who is acting as our bond counsel tonight from Figgery Drinker. I have Nikki Franklin from Peters Municipal Consultants. They're our bond advisors. And then I also have Jamia Alexander Ball, who is the branch manager of the new library branch that I want to talk to you about tonight. So first, I wanted to thank you for allowing us the time to speak to you about the library, our growing needs, and our plans for the future. We're here tonight to request approval to issue up to $9 million in bonds to build a new branch location of the library. For no increase from the 2020 debt service tax rate, the community will have access to an additional library location with increased capacity to provide needed spaces, programs, and services to our growing community now and into the future. Our library is well used and continues to see increases in circulation, both physical and electronic, as well as program attendance year after year. And this project is supported by the community. As you'll see later, we've completed a survey and found that an overwhelming majority of Eagle, Union, and Perry residents that participated anticipate using this new location in the future. We also have letters of support from Tom Santelli, Boone County Commissioner, Dr. Scott Robeson, the Superintendent of the Zionsville Community Schools, and the Board President and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Boone County. So why are we building a branch? Well, we're serving a growing population. In August of 2020, our library expanded our service area to include Worth Township. So now we're made up of Eagle, Union, and Worth Townships. And in 2019, that total estimated population of the service area was 37,526 people. And that's a 47% increase from the population that we served in 2010. And 2010 is a few years after the second half of our building that we're currently in was built. The western portion of our service area has seen incredible growth in the past several years. It's also one of the fastest growing areas for new families in the student population. ZCS projections have the Boone Meadow Elementary student population, which is on the western edge of the school district, growing by 5.8% each year. And as you know, this growth is only expected to continue. And our library has grown to meet the needs of this growing community. Our patrons have access to over 7 million items through the Evergreen Library Consortium. In 2019, we circulated an average of 21 items for every resident in Zionsville. So if you think about that for a minute, that's every single resident from newborn babies to centenarians. If every single person in Zionsville checked out 21 items from the library, that's how many items we circulated in 2019. And it's no surprise with stats like that, that we were 5th in the state per capita in borrowing in 2019. And in addition, our programming attendance and offerings ranked first among state and national peers in a 2017 benchmarking study. We've seen consistent growth in use and continued need for more services, materials, and spaces. Our library also works to strengthen our growing community by building connections. In 2020, our collaborations included moving the Zionsville Nature Center into the library and offering joint programming. The library was a voting location in the general election. We had blood drives in the library's parking lot. A flu shot clinic was held at the library. The Story Walk at Elm Street Green was a collaboration with the Zionsville Parks Department that we developed for opening in March of this year. And we attended local events, including the Whitestown Outdoor Halloween event and farmers markets. And I'm sure we would have attended more events if there had been more in 2020 and it was safe to do so. This branch will be a benefit to all residents. It will be a more convenient option for the western portion of our service district, with more spaces for programs, including a larger meeting room that is accessible and available for public use outside of our library operating hours. And that's something that we just can't do with our current location. In addition, our larger programs are consistently running into issues with space. It will also have a makerspace for makers, small businesses, and anyone hoping to create and learn new skills. There will be more access to study rooms and a variety of group meeting spaces, ties to outdoor space and nature programming and experiences, which is another thing that our library currently is landlocked and we cannot offer that without going off-site currently. And there will also be additional children's spaces and activities, as well as more collections and services available to everyone. I've mentioned that we have a great deal of community support, and one significant example of this support is the generous contribution of 11 acres that includes green space, woods, and trails by the Whitestown Town Council. We're excited about this location and as it is near much of the growth in the area, and it offers opportunities for the outdoor programs and services that we just cannot offer right now. In preparation for building this new location, we conducted a survey that closed in April of 2021. Of particular interest to our Zionsville leaders is that 290 of those respondents were from Eagle, Union, and Perry Townships. And of those respondents, over 70% anticipated using this new branch. And what those residents say about what they want in a future library includes access to nature trails, sidewalks, and outdoor space around the library. That was actually the #1 most desired feature, which again is something we just can't provide in our current location. But this new location has that kind of space available for us. They want flexible indoor and outdoor space, quiet study rooms and reading nooks, outdoor learning, playstations and playground, STEM, creative lab, makerspace, indoor play areas, and more community meeting spaces. A new branch will be able to bring many of these elements into the library and expand our current resources and services. So I want to share a bit about where we are in this process. For the past several months, we've been soliciting feedback from residents. We have also selected an architecture firm, and we have a site secured. And now we're currently developing our architectural plans, and we're on to this bond process. Our hope is to start construction in October of this year. It would take about a year to fully build the building, and then we hope to open in the 4th quarter of 2022. So again, we're here to ask the Zionsville Town Council to approve the issuance of up to $9 billion in bonds, the proceeds of which would be used to build the building, landscaping, finishes, furniture, and to purchase the collection. Due to the donation of the land, that will not be a part of what the bond will be funding. Some details about this bond request. The library's existing bond will be paid in full in June of 2023. No payments for this new bond will start until after the existing bond is paid in order to lessen the impact for taxpayers. So basically, as the old bond goes off, the new bond will come seamlessly on afterwards. The debt service tax rate to build the new building will not increase from the 2020 current bond repayment rate of 0.0159. And to give you an idea of what this impact is to an average taxpayer, this is currently and will be less than $20 annually for the owners of a $250,000 home. We'll have more information in a packet that we are going to hand out to you after this presentation. And that is basically everything that I have to talk to you about with this bond request for tonight. But before I go, I wanted to talk about one more thing, which is what about Perry Township? A lot of you have asked about Perry Township. We get a lot of questions about Perry Township. So first, I want to say unequivocally that we are ready, willing, and eager to serve Perry Township. And we think the time to do that is now. As you know, our goal is to remove barriers to library services, and adding Perry Township into our service district will help us to provide consistent services to all of Zionsville. That's something that comes up for us a lot at the library, is that you've got residents of Zionsville that will come in and they'll want a library card, and we'll have to tell them that they can't get one without a fee because they happen to be residents of Perry Township. So we would like to be able to offer these services to Perry Township, and we have included more information about that in the folder that I mentioned that Melissa will hand out to you at the end of this presentation. And I just wanted to say that as the elected representatives, all it takes is a vote from you to expand services into Perry Township. Okay. So I wanted to thank you again for giving me this chance to talk to you about our library expansion and our need to issue these bonds, as well as the opportunity to serve Perry Township. And Melissa's going to go ahead and hand out these packets. And then I just wanted to make us available for any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Sarah. And again, we're not voting on anything today. This is just informational. Any questions you have for Sarah or?
So I was just going to ask, you mentioned the bond was going to fall off in 2023, is that what you said, or 2022?
2023.
Are Eagle and Union currently paying on that bond?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll fall off. If this goes through, the new one kicks up, doesn't impact them essentially at all.
Yeah, it's just going to be like a straight, and we're not increasing that bond amount, so it should just be this straight into the new.
But Perry's not paying on the old one,
They're
and
not.
as of right now, it's not.
No, you would have to include Perry Township into our service district before you made the vote on the bond, the issuance of bonds, in order for Perry to be included in this process.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I've already talked to Monty and you in the past. And so as the bond falls off, if we didn't approve this, would taxpayers be paying a lower rate?
Not necessarily. As I talked about with all of these earlier slides, basically our library is continuing to grow. The community is continuing to grow. A 47% increase in our service population over just the last basically 10 years means that if we were not able to get the bonds issued to do this project, we would still be trying to find ways to expand what we have available to better meet the needs of our service district.
I know that's one of the bigger questions that residents had fired off to us about, who's paying for this. And then the other question is, why is it in Whitestown and not in Zionsville?
Well, like I mentioned, our service area now is Eagle, Union, and Worth Township. So this is in Worth Township. If you look at the map that's on the placemat that I gave you, a lot of growth even in Eagle is over on the western part of our service district. And I think no matter what, we would have been looking toward the western edge of our service district, even if we hadn't been able to include Worth into our service area, but now it is. And this is a great way to be able to provide access over on that western edge where all the growth is.
So can I make a comment, Chris? So we've had a few conversations, or at least a couple conversations in the past. I think this is a fabulous thing that you all have proposed, especially the community center aspect of this is something that, even if it is on the west side, is, one of those things that are lacking in the western part of Zionsville, to be able to address the needs of the community in that area. So as long as it is open to Zionsville residents and not just Worth Township residents, I think this is a very worthwhile venture. And I know that there were a lot of questions around how this is getting funded and who's paying the taxes for this. And it is a small amount of tax. I don't want to discount even $20 on a $250,000 home, but still, in my eyes, it's relatively small for a big benefit to the community. So.
Absolutely.
Sarah, can you talk real quick? You mentioned something I want to clarify. In theory, we'll be voting on two different things. One would be to include Perry in the service area, and the other is the bond.
Yes.
If we said, we don't want to do Perry now and did the bond, from what I heard, we couldn't add Perry to the current network until the bond got paid off. Is that correct? Like, is it sort of a, hey, we should definitely do this now because it'll be worse to do it later? Worse is the wrong word, but more complicated to do it later.
Well, we could add them later, but then they would not be paying on this bond for this new building. So if you're going to do it fairly soon and include them in this entire process, and that also includes getting the feedback and helping us shape the building. So if Perry wants to be a full partner in building this building and making sure it meets the needs of their township, then they need to be included before the bond issuance is approved by town council.
And Sarah, you can answer this, or Nick, maybe for you. Does this impact the town's bonding capacity, or is this bonding capacity unique to just the libraries? In other words, if we issued $9 million here, it doesn't take away from us issuing a $9 million bond for roads or anything like that, correct?
That's correct. This is just, the library will be issuing these bonds. We just need permission from our fiscal body to approve that, but it will not affect the town's capacity.
And if you issue the bonds and the rates are better than you anticipate, will the bond amount be lower, or will that money just be available for more materials to circulate and whatnot?
It's really going to be kind of a case-by-case basis. We're going to take it as it comes, because right now, I think we already talked about tonight the prices of lumber and steel.
Yeah.
And we've been kind of dealing with that as we've had this project going on for many, many months now. That as we head up to it, our big commitment to our residents, our service district, is that we will not increase the rate beyond what it was in 2020 for this bond. So it's really going to kind of depend on what the materials and things are looking like at that time that will allow us to adjust so that we do not increase that rate.
And then will the bond ask then come at the next meeting, or what's the timeline for that?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Do we have
the timeline for the actual asks? Have we said that yet,
That's
Sarah?
going to be at the next meeting.
next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilors, any other questions? All right. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate everyone that came today to support that. Last new business item, we've got to consider a consideration of an additional appropriation resolution. This is a public hearing. Resolution 2021-09. Mr. Lance, I see you casually making your way to the lectern. you're driving away half our audience, but don't take it personally.
Quite used to it, frankly.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you and good evening. You have before you this evening a resolution for the additional appropriation of $124,500 in the unrestricted motor vehicle highway fund. For the past couple of years, the town has been engaged in a complex condemnation process to finalize the purchase of some new right-of-way that was necessary for the north-south connector road. Just for reference, this is the large agricultural parcels through which that new road passes. The process of condemnation, when parties cannot agree on the compensation, allows the town to make a deposit with the courts, a certain amount determined by court appraisers, take interest in the property, and then go ahead and advance the project, all while the parties can then continue to negotiate and reach a settlement. When this is not possible or not likely, the last or one of the last steps in this process is a court ordered mediation process through a third-party attorney, which is a last-ditch effort for the parties to come to some type of agreement for the condemnation or the ultimate purchase price for the property without going to a jury trial. I'm happy to report that in a recent mediation effort, terms were determined that were agreeable to both parties. However, this does require us to additionally compensate these property owners in order to conclude this matter. And thus we have this item before you this evening. Just for your edification, should you approve this additional appropriation, the anticipated motor vehicle highway unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year will be marginally affected, but will still remain over $2.5 million, which is about 60% of our operating expenses this year. So this is a very, very healthy fund with ample reserves to cover operating expenses. Happy to answer any more questions you may have. And of course, your counsel, Heather Willey, her partner was our counsel on this matter, Bart Carwath, the same firm, and Heather is quite well aware of these proceedings as well.
Councilors, any questions? And Tammy Havard is also virtual if you've got questions on the financial side as well. All right, well, this is a public hearing. As I mentioned, there's proof of publication. If anyone wants to come up and speak on this matter, you may welcome to do so. I'll open the public hearing. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Councilors, any other questions? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I heard Councilor Culp first because it was my better ear. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very good. Where am I at? The motion is approved. 6-0. That's resolution 2021-09. Councilors, any other matters for any of you? All right, we've got two sets of claims. One was the claims that were continued from our last meeting, and then the regular claims that came in. So the first is the approval of the 5/17/2021 claims. Tammy is still available if you have any questions. Any questions on these claims? If not, I'll make a motion to approve those claims.
Second.
Second from Councilor Burke. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Claims are approved by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. We now have approval of the 6/7/2021 claims. Again, Tammy is available. Questions?
This is not a claim. It may not be a direct claims question, but we keep getting a lot of inquiries from the public about the lawsuit and the costs around it, both on town council and the administrator side. Is there an understanding of when those claims will be processed so that we know?
Tammy, did you hear that question?
I did. On the Barnes and Thornburg too, Tammy and I've talked today, but.
Yeah, Heather, you could go ahead and start and then I can fill in.
Yeah, so for Barnes and Thornburg, who is obviously representing the council, we should have final time pending no appeal, by the end of this month. I know there was some residual time for the 1st of June, but we've been providing updates along the way to council leadership. So we are happy to prepare a detailed outline to date. I know I shared that with Councilor Traylor this afternoon. He raised that same question, and we'll circulate that for the town council. I'll work to get that to you all tomorrow, just so you can see the town council's perspective. And again, that's just with respect to the Styron versus Town Council matter. And then we've had some questions about some other claims that have showed up, and I did share with Tammy, and a few of you have asked me specific questions. So there was a document I think circulated that had different legal costs bucketed. So obviously we have a general counsel retainer with the town council, which is a fixed fee amount. That's really all the town council has, other than the claims related to the litigation. And then there are residual matters, including the one we just had on Eagle Standard, that we've been representing the town itself, not the town council.
Yeah.
So I did talk to Tammy about that, and I think we do need to move those to the appropriate bucket, just so for public transparency purposes, you know where the spend is. And so we can identify those. I've identified from our perspective everything by matter, so that you all can see what's concluding, and most of it's wrapping up or coming to a close. But and when I distribute that, so I'm going to give you a full report, and I'm going to share the same with Tammy, just so she can see that year-to-date spend across all of the different matters for the town, for the litigation, and then for the town council. So you'll have that.
Well, we have to do an appropriation for, because our budget obviously was just a retainer. So anything that gets thrown into our bucket, so to speak, will we have to go back and do an appropriation for
I don't know
this?
if we'll need an additional appropriation if it's paid for under the town's general fund. It seems they could pay it in that way since legal expenses are already included there. But I think for public transparency, you may want to break that out just so
Yeah.
that the public can follow along. And we're certainly okay with doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do want to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll make a note of that so we can, at some point, pending whether or not there's an appeal, obviously that would change things, but we can do to date and then move further.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, no problem.
Tammy, anything to add on your side?
We would just try to mirror the timeline of closing out the documents and then having a final report for council on the matters that you're interested in. If you've noticed on the claims, we have been breaking the claims out for the legal fees into employment matters or labor matters, land matters, general matters, so that you can see those high level, because with the case names, that might not necessarily tell you what kind of matter it is. So that's the approach that we did for the transparency for public and for council to be able to see it and to know what kind of expense that is for. And I think we will continue that going forward, and then provide separate report, as Heather mentioned, from the legal firms on the more specifics.
I did want to interject one thing that Tammy in her comments made me think of, that she and I did talk about. So there are a few claims, and I will do the same, that we will redact to a more generic form. For example, if we have an employment matter, whether it's an employment matter for the town on their council's terms or ours, we would not normally put that, because this would be a public document. The public's entitled to this information on the town's resources. So we would redact the name and probably put a more generic name for you all to see. But if you have questions, we're certainly happy to answer them as your counsel. The other thing is particularly related to the litigation or to any piece of litigation. We would, if you are interested in sort of what makes up that, it's probably a conversation that people would want to go through with you, because those would not be public documents as they're deliberative, and oftentimes that narrative that's included is attorney-client work product. So there are some restrictions that both parties would have that we would just need to, we can get you, Tammy and I talked about this, we can get you all that information, but I think we just want to work to make sure we're doing it in a way that protects particularly our employees' competences as an employment matter.
And one more comment on the budget. Sorry to interrupt. So for the budget, we do have the retainers budgeted in admin and in council, but then we also have non-departmental legal fees. And so that's where we have put all the other matters that go on in the town. And so for clarification, and knowing that legal fees are not expected amounts necessarily, it can vary from year to year. We have the pool of budget for that. And so that's the money that we would monitor throughout the year, and then see if we would need to do an additional appropriation or not towards the end of the year. And so for clarification, is council okay with having that in the general legal fees Or do they want to see council fees in town council?
Maybe we can talk about that offline, Tammy, and
Yes,
figure that out.
that sounds great. Thank
Yep,
you.
great. Thank you.
I just have one last question on the claims. I noticed obviously, we get our retainer, Barnes and Thornburg retainer, we're paying for the June retainer in this particular set of claims. And I noticed the Giddings and Whitsett is March. So have they not filed April, May, and June?
So are we three?
Question for Tammy.
So the purchase card imports for one of the sets of claims is from March, and then another one is more recent. And so I believe there is another claim that would be hitting on the next meeting to catch up, because the purchase card information right now is behind because we swipe the transaction, we get billed for it, and then we pay it.
So that one's paid on P card, Tammy?
Yes, correct.
Got it.
Paid prior to claims being approved?
The transaction happens, and then just like with any credit card transaction, then you have the right to dispute it or whatnot. But those are budgeted expenses.
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, sounds like it is.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Tammy, for being available.
Of course.
Any motions on claims?
Move to approve.
Got a first from Counselor Choi. I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Claims are approved by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second from Counselor Burke. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 21st, 2021 at 7:30 a.m. right here in Zionsville Town Council chambers and also via Zoom. Final notice will be posted in compliance with Indiana open door law. Thanks all.